If you're listening to this, please don't think I'm crazy. When I tell people what happened, they laugh or stare like I've lost my mind. But I didn't lose my mind. I lost my smile. And the night I lost it began inside the walls of a home everyone thought was perfect. My name is Clara, 32 years old, a teacher, a mother, and, back then, a wife who believed she'd built a life worth envying. I had a husband who fixed things around the house, a daughter who filled the air with laughter, and a best friend who felt more like my sister than anything else. We were the kind of people neighbors waved to, the couple that hosted summer barbecues and posted silly family photos. If you had asked me then, I would have sworn I was safe, loved, and understood. Before I tell you how everything shattered, I just want you to stay with me till the very end, because what happened after the firefighters left changed everything. And if stories like mine mean something to you, please like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can hear how trust can burn, break, and somehow still teach us something. Life felt ordinary in the best way. Sunday pancakes, Monday complaints, Friday movie nights, the small habits that convince you love is forever. David, my husband, could make me laugh even when we fought. And Lila, my best friend, was the kind of woman who'd show up with coffee and a blanket whenever life turned grey. She knew everything about us, the jokes, the habits, even the things I never said out loud. Looking back, maybe she knew too much. It began with little changes. David working later. His phone always face down. Lila visiting a bit more often, always asking, how's he holding up with work stress? I thought she was being caring. I told her things I probably shouldn't have. She'd smile gently and say, men just go through phases, Clara. Don't make it bigger than it is. So I believed her. Because believing her was easier than believing my heart, which whispered that something was wrong. One evening, I saw David laughing at his phone, the kind of laugh that used to belong to me. When I asked what was funny, he said, just a meme from Mark at work. But when I reached for the phone playfully, he turned the screen away. A small moment, easy to forget, if it didn't happen again. And again. Then there were the perfumes, faint traces that weren't mine. The new cologne he claimed was a gift from a coworker. And Lila's constant reassurance, her voice calm and certain. You're tired, Clara. You're imagining things. I wanted to believe her so badly. Because if she was wrong, then it meant my world, my marriage, my friendship, wasn't real. One night I found a lipstick mark on David's shirt. Not my color. He laughed it off, kissed my forehead, and said, you're cute when you're jealous. I smiled back, but something inside me broke, quietly, like glass under carpet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the glow of his phone lighting up every few minutes on the nightstand. I didn't touch it. I just watched the light flicker, like a heartbeat that no longer belonged to me. By morning, the silence between us was thick enough to choke on. I asked if everything was okay. He said, of course it is. Then he left early, without his coffee, without a kiss. I remember standing in the doorway, watching him drive away, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. That's the moment I realized love doesn't always end with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it ends quietly, when one person keeps pretending and the other stops believing. I didn't know it yet, but that silence was only the first warning. And the two people I trusted most, my husband and my best friend, were already holding the match that would set my life on fire. But that was just the beginning. Lila and I had known each other since we were 16. Back then, we were inseparable, two girls dreaming about love, family, and the perfect future. She was always the louder one, the confident one. And I was the quiet type, the kind of girl who blushed too easily and believed that kindness could fix anything. When David came into my life, Lila was the first to meet him. She teased me for weeks, calling him Mr. Movie Smile because of that charming grin he never seemed to lose. And when we married, she stood beside me, holding my bouquet while I promised forever. She cried harder than I did that day, at least that's what I thought. Now I wonder what those tears really meant. Lila was there for everything, my pregnancy, my daughter's first steps, every broken appliance, every sleepless night. She had a key to our house and a seat at our dinner table. Even my daughter called her Aunt Lila. It felt right back then. It felt safe. After David started working late, I found comfort in Lila's company. She'd drop by with takeout or a bottle of wine, saying, "You shouldn't eat alone." That's how sad movies start. We'd laugh, talk about work, and she'd listen as I shared my worries, about David being distant, about how different things felt. She always knew the right words. "Don't overthink it, Clara. You two are perfect. He adores you. You're just tired." I believed her. Because she was my best friend, the kind of person you'd trust with your life. But then, little things began to shift. She'd ask questions that didn't feel like friendly concern anymore. Like one night when she said, "Do you still, have that spark with him? Sometimes men drift because they miss the thrill." I laughed awkwardly, trying to brush it off, but her tone lingered in my mind long after she left. And then came the birthday dinner. David had promised he'd be home early that evening. I'd cooked his favorite meal, lit candles, and even wore that blue dress he always said made my eyes look brighter. But the clock kept ticking. 7 p.m. 8 p.m. 9 p.m. And no David. Instead, it was Lila who showed up, with a cake in her hands and that same cheerful energy. "Don't tell me he forgot your birthday, or I'll strangle him myself," she joked. We laughed, but it felt hollow. She poured wine, we talked, and somewhere between her stories and my silence, I noticed her phone lighting up, with David's name. It was only for a second. But I saw it. Clear as day. She turned it over quickly, pretending not to notice. My heart began to race. I told myself maybe he was calling her to ask if I was upset. Maybe he was planning a surprise. Maybe I was paranoid. But when she left that night, she hugged me longer than usual. Her perfume, the same one I'd smelled on David's shirt, clung to my sweater. The next morning, David was extra affectionate. Too affectionate. Breakfast in bed, compliments, kisses on my forehead. All things I used to dream of, but now they felt wrong, like he was trying to rewrite something that had already been erased. I didn't ask questions. Not yet. Because when you love someone deeply enough, denial becomes a form of self-defense. A few weeks later, Lila asked me to help her redecorate her apartment. I went, eager to distract myself from the doubts eating at me. Her place smelled like him. That same cologne, faint but unmistakable. And on her kitchen counter, there was a half-empty coffee mug, the same kind of mug David used to take to work. My hands trembled as I asked, "Did David stop by here recently?" She froze for a heartbeat, then smiled, a little too quickly. "Oh, yeah. He helped me fix my sink last weekend. You were at your mom's, remember?" I nodded, pretending it was fine. But the truth hit me in waves, quiet but undeniable. They weren't just crossing paths. They were crossing lines. That night, when I got home, David was already in bed. I watched him sleep, his face peaceful, like he hadn't done a single wrong thing in his life. And I hated myself, not for loving him, but for not being brave enough to stop pretending. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between us grew colder. Lila still texted daily, her words sugar-sweet, like nothing had changed. But I started noticing things I once missed, the way she avoided eye contact when David's name came up, the way his phone seemed to buzz every time she was near. Then one evening, I decided to test them. I told David I'd be working late at school. Instead, I parked my car 2 blocks away from Lila's apartment and waited. And sure enough, 20 minutes later, David's car pulled up in front of her building. He looked around, then went inside. The world around me blurred. My heart stopped. And in that one moment, I knew the truth. The betrayal wasn't something I could forgive or unsee. It wasn't a phase. It was real. And it was happening right under my roof, and in the arms of my best friend. But even then, I didn't storm in. I just sat there in the car, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers went numb, whispering to myself, "Don't lose your mind, Clara. Just don't lose your mind." I wish I could tell you that was the worst of it. But no. That was only the moment before the real storm began. I used to think love faded quietly, like the color of an old photograph. But the truth is, sometimes you can feel it slipping away in real time. In every half-hearted smile, every distracted glance, every "I'm tired" that really means, I don't care anymore. After that night outside Lila's apartment, everything inside me changed, though I didn't let it show. I woke up the next morning beside David, listening to his steady breathing, pretending that everything was normal. He kissed my forehead, poured his coffee, and smiled like always. But his eyes didn't meet mine. At first, it was the little things. No more good morning texts when he left early. No more checking in during the day. No more "I miss you"s before bed. He stopped noticing the small things, my new haircut, the perfume he once said he loved. He even stopped touching me the same way. His hugs grew lighter, shorter, like he couldn't wait to pull away. I tried everything. I cooked his favorite meals, surprised him at work, even left notes in his lunchbox like I used to. But he always had an excuse: meetings, deadlines, exhaustion. One night, as I served dinner, he didn't even look up from his phone. His fork scraped against the plate as I asked softly, "Do you even like it?" He blinked, startled. "Huh. Yeah, it's good." Then his phone buzzed again, and he smiled, a real smile. But not at me. At someone else on that screen. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just said, "Must be important." He shrugged. "Just work." But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Work doesn't make you grin like that. The next day, I confided in Lila again, because that's what I'd always done. It's almost funny now, how betrayal hides behind the softest voices. I told her, "He's changing, Lila. He feels so far away." And she, with her perfect sympathy, sighed and said, "Maybe he's just stressed. Men are simple creatures. Don't push him too hard." I wanted to believe her. I really did. A few nights later, David came home late again. This time, he smelled like someone else's perfume, faint but familiar. And when I asked, he didn't even flinch. "Oh, one of the clients hugged me goodbye," he said casually, tossing his jacket aside. "Clients?" I repeated, trying not to sound suspicious. He nodded. "Big meeting tonight. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. Because the old David, my David, used to call me after every meeting. Now, he barely looked up when I spoke. When we went to bed, I turned away, closing my eyes, pretending to sleep. A few minutes later, I heard him whispering. Softly. Laughing under his breath. The kind of laugh you give someone when your heart belongs to them. And my heart shattered quietly under the sound of it. The next morning, I tried to be brave. I packed my daughter's lunch, brushed her hair, and kissed her cheek like nothing was wrong. But when I turned, I caught a glimpse of David smiling at his phone again. That same half-smile. The one that used to be mine. I asked, "Who are you talking to?" He froze. "Just Mark. From the office." But when I walked behind him, I saw the reflection of the screen in the window. It wasn't Mark. It was Lila. That name burned itself into my mind. Over and over. Lila. That day, I didn't text her back. I didn't answer her call. I needed time to think, to breathe. But she didn't give me space. By evening, she showed up at my door with a bottle of wine and her usual smile. "You've been quiet today," she said. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah. Just tired." She tilted her head. "You sure? You know you can tell me anything." Her voice was warm, but her eyes darted around, scanning the room, searching for something. Or maybe someone. And then, as she sat on my couch, her phone lit up again. David's name. I stared at it long enough that she noticed. She quickly flipped it over and said, "Oh, he just wanted to ask about your anniversary gift. Don't spoil it." Her lie was smooth. Too smooth. I excused myself, went to the kitchen, and stood there gripping the counter. My heart was racing so hard I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to confront her right there. But I didn't. Because I wasn't ready to lose both of them at once. After she left, David came home smelling like her perfume again. And when I asked him, "Did you see Lila today?" he smiled, that same fake smile, and said, "No." Why? That night, I cried quietly into my pillow. Not because I had proof. But because I already knew, they were building something behind my back. Something that used to belong to me. And all I could do was watch it happen, piece by piece. The next morning, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. The sparkle in my eyes was gone. The laughter lines around my lips had hardened into cracks. And that's when I realized, love doesn't always die in storms. Sometimes, it dies in silence. In the way two people stop saying goodnight. In the way one heart starts beating alone. But even then, I didn't give up. Because somewhere deep down, I still believed that if I held on long enough, maybe he'd remember what we had. Maybe he'd come back to me. Maybe I was enough. But I was wrong. And soon, I'd learn just how wrong. Because the distance between us wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical. And one late-night phone call would finally force me to face the truth I'd been running from. It was a Tuesday night when everything started to unravel. I remember because it was so ordinary. The kind of night you never expect to destroy your peace. David had said he'd be working late, again. I'd stopped arguing about it by then. I just nodded, smiled faintly, and said, "Okay, don't stay out too long." But deep down, something didn't feel right. After putting my daughter to bed, I sat in the quiet, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, pretending I wasn't waiting for his message. The clock struck 10. Then 11. And just when I was about to give up and go to bed, my phone buzzed. But it wasn't David. It was Lila. A simple message. "You up?" Strange. Lila rarely texted me that late. Still, I replied, "Yeah, couldn't sleep." "You?" No answer. For a long time. And then, a single typing bubble appeared. Then disappeared. It sounds silly, but that little typing bubble made my stomach twist. Because something about it felt wrong, too hesitant, too calculated. I decided to distract myself by cleaning up the kitchen. But as I walked past the window, I froze. There, across the street, parked under the dim streetlight, was a car that looked exactly like David's. My heart skipped. No. He said he was working. It couldn't be. But I couldn't shake it. I grabbed my phone, turned off the kitchen light, and peeked through the blinds. The car was still there, engine off, lights out. Then, a shadow moved inside it. Two of them. One of the figures reached out and touched the other's hand. And that was when I felt my chest tighten so hard, I could barely breathe. For a second, I thought about running outside. Confronting him. But then I blinked, and the car started. The taillights flared red, and it drove away into the night. I wanted to tell myself it wasn't him. That my mind was playing tricks on me. But when I went upstairs to our bedroom later, his cologne lingered in the air, fresh, strong, new. Like he'd just sprayed it before leaving. That smell haunted me for days. The next morning, I tried to bring it up casually. "So, how was work last night?" He didn't even look up from his coffee. Boring. "Why?" "Just asking," I said, forcing a smile. "Yeah," he muttered, scrolling through his phone. Meetings ran late. I was exhausted. I wanted to ask who he was texting, why he smelled like her perfume again, why he didn't look me in the eyes anymore. But instead, I just said, "You should get some rest tonight." He nodded. "Maybe I'll crash at the office. Big project due." That's when I heard myself say something I never thought I would. "Do you want me to bring you dinner tomorrow? I could drop by." His reaction was too quick. Too defensive. "No. No, it's okay. I'll probably just order something in." I smiled softly. "Right. Of course." But inside, my heart whispered, "Liar." That day, I couldn't focus on anything. Every sound, every phone vibration, made me jump. By evening, I couldn't stand it anymore. So I called Lila. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. She sounded breathless when she picked up. "Oh. Hey. Sorry, I was, in the shower." "At 7 in the evening?" I asked, chuckling nervously. She laughed too quickly. "Yeah, long day." I swallowed. "Did David call you today?" "He said he was working late again." Silence. Then, Yeah, he mentioned something about that new client. You know, the one from downtown? I frowned. I don't remember him telling me about a downtown client. She stuttered slightly. Maybe I got it wrong. I mean, he just mentioned work. Nothing specific. Her tone, it was off. That usual warmth, that easy confidence, gone. It was like she was reading lines she hadn't memorized yet. After that call, I sat on the couch, staring at nothing. My heart told me what my mind didn't want to admit. But what truly broke me was what happened the next day. David had left early for work. I went upstairs to change the sheets, and as I lifted his pillow, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I never checked his messages before. But that day, I did. A preview lit up the screen. Lila, be careful this time. She's starting to notice. The world tilted. My hands started shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. Be careful this time. Starting to notice. I stared at the words until my vision blurred with tears. And before I could read more, the screen went black. Locked again. I sat on the floor, clutching that phone like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. When David came home that night, I said nothing. He kissed my cheek, out of habit, not love, and disappeared into the shower. And while the water ran, I opened the window and stared out into the dark. Across the street, I saw it again, that same car, parked under the same streetlight. Empty this time. But somehow, it still felt like it was watching me. That's when the first real thought of betrayal settled deep in my chest. Not suspicion. Not fear. But betrayal, slow, cold, and real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lila's message, heard David's voice, and imagined what they whispered when I wasn't around. I thought about the little moments, her touching his arm, her calling him sweetheart jokingly, her always defending him when I was upset. And then I realized. Maybe those moments weren't jokes. Maybe they were practice. Still, I told myself, don't jump to conclusions. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe it's all a misunderstanding. But deep down, I already knew. Because when love starts feeling like distance, and trust starts feeling like doubt, the truth is never far behind. And I was about to find it. In the cruelest, most heartbreaking way possible. You know how people say you'll just know when something's wrong? They're right. Because that night, I didn't need proof. My heart already knew, I just didn't want to see it. It was Friday. The day David promised we'd have dinner together. He said he'd be home by 8, that he'd make it up to me. So I cooked his favorite, creamy pasta, garlic bread, and the cheap red wine we used to share when things were still good. 8 came. Then 8:30. Then 9. I called once. No answer. Twice. Straight to voicemail. By 10, the pasta had gone cold, and my hope, colder. Just as I was about to give up, a notification blinked on his tablet, the one he left synced to his phone. A text. From Lila. I got the candles ready winking face. Candles. I remember just staring at those words, feeling like my whole body had gone still. Candles for what? For who? A wave of nausea hit me. I clicked the message thread. I don't know what I was hoping for, maybe a misunderstanding. But there it was. Message after message. Can't wait to see you. Same place. You know it. And then, the photo. A photo of her living room, dim lights, 2 glasses of wine, a blanket on the couch. Her hand in the corner of the frame, wearing the bracelet I'd given her last Christmas. The same bracelet that used to mean friendship. Now, it meant betrayal. My chest tightened so much I could barely breathe. I dropped the tablet onto the couch and stumbled to the kitchen sink, clutching the counter to steady myself. He wasn't just cheating. He was cheating with her. My best friend. My sister in everything but blood. The next few minutes felt like a blur, tears, disbelief, anger, all crashing together like waves. I walked in circles, whispering to myself, no, 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 this isn't real. But deep down, I knew. It was real. And it was happening right now. Because I knew that living room. I knew those candles. I'd been there 100 times before. And if I looked out my window from the right angle, I could almost see her front porch. I grabbed my keys. Not because I wanted to confront them, not yet. I just needed to see. The night air was cold, sharp enough to sting my skin. I parked at the end of the street, just far enough so my headlights wouldn't give me away. Lila's house glowed faintly, warm, golden light spilling through the curtains. And then, I saw his car, parked right outside. Every bone in my body went still. It was real. He was there. I wanted to scream, to break something. But instead, I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers went white. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. And then, movement. Through the thin gap in her curtains, I saw them. David. And Lila. Laughing. Touching. Kissing. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just cheating anymore, it was betrayal in its rawest form. The kind that kills something inside you forever. I couldn't look away. It was like watching my own life collapse in slow motion. And the worst part? She looked happy. He looked happy. Happier than I'd seen him in months. I leaned back in my seat, shaking uncontrollably. Hot tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "How could you? Both of you?" I thought about every late-night talk Lila and I had shared, when she told me I was lucky to have a man like David. How she'd comforted me when I thought our marriage was struggling. And now, I realized she wasn't comforting me. She was covering her tracks. I wiped my face, forcing myself to breathe. Because if I stayed there any longer, I would have broken completely. So I drove home. No music. No lights. Just silence. When I got there, I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the front door of the home that wasn't a home anymore. And then something inside me shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't confusion. It was something colder. Sharper. Rage. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining every lie, every whispered secret, every time she looked me in the eyes and said she loved me like a sister. But sisters don't steal husbands. Friends don't ruin homes. Around 3 in the morning, I got up. I walked into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were swollen, red, hollow. And for the first time, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. I whispered to her, "You've been too kind for too long." That was the moment something inside me broke and reformed into something else entirely. Because the next time I saw David and Lila together, I wouldn't be crying. I'd be watching. Planning. That night changed everything. Not just because I learned the truth, but because I learned who I really was when pushed too far. And as I stood there in that mirror, wiping away the last of my tears, one thought echoed in my mind, clear, cold, and steady. If they could destroy me together, maybe I could destroy them the same way. Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. The sun rose, the birds sang, but my world stayed dark. I made coffee just to hold something warm. I didn't taste it. I didn't even drink it. I just sat there at the table, staring at nothing, listening to the clock tick. Every second was another reminder of what I'd seen, David's hands on Lila, his laughter blending with hers. By the time I heard the front door open, I already knew it was him. The sound of his keys, the shuffle of his shoes, so normal, so familiar, it almost made me sick. He walked in like nothing happened. Like he hadn't just destroyed our marriage 6 hours ago. "Morning," he said casually, setting his keys down. I looked up. He looked refreshed, clean-shaven, smiling. That smile. The same smile I used to love. Now it just looked fake. I didn't answer. He frowned a little, walking toward me. "You okay? You look tired." I laughed, quietly at first, then louder, until it almost scared me. He blinked. "What's so funny?" I looked straight into his eyes. "Candles," I whispered. His smile faltered. "What?" I stood up slowly, crossing my arms. "Did she light them before you got there, or did you help her set the mood?" He froze. And that was all I needed. The silence said everything his mouth couldn't. I could see his throat tighten. His eyes flicker. Guilt. Panic. Recognition. Sarah, he started. No, don't, I cut him off. My voice shook, but I didn't care. Don't you dare say my name like you still have the right. He took a step forward. Please, just let me explain. Explain what? How you ended up in her house? How your shirt magically fell off? He closed his eyes, rubbing the back of his neck, the same nervous tic he always had when caught lying. Sarah, it's not what you think. I slammed my hand on the table so hard the coffee spilled over. Don't you dare feed me that line. I shouted. I saw you, David. I saw you with her. He went pale. Last night, I continued, my voice trembling, you promised you'd come home early. You told me you wanted to fix things. And while I sat here waiting for you, you were lighting candles with her. My best friend. The room went so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. David's eyes dropped to the floor. For the first time, he didn't try to deny it. Didn't try to twist the story. Didn't even pretend to be innocent. He just whispered, I'm sorry. 2 words. 2 meaningless words that shattered everything inside me. Sorry. I laughed bitterly. You're sorry? After months of lies, after making me feel crazy for suspecting anything, that's all you have? He stepped closer again, desperate now. It wasn't supposed to happen, okay? It just what? I interrupted, my voice breaking. Just happened. You tripped and fell into her arms. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw regret. But regret doesn't erase betrayal. Regret doesn't erase the image of your husband kissing your best friend under candlelight. How long? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. I slammed my hand again. How long, David? He swallowed hard. 3 months. 3 months. It felt like my lungs stopped working. I staggered back, gripping the edge of the counter. 3 months. That's 90 days of lies, of fake smiles, of me lying next to a stranger every night thinking he still loved me. And Lila, she'd sat in this kitchen, in this chair, smiling at me while sleeping with my husband. My voice cracked as I whispered, she was my best friend. I know, he said softly. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I stared at him, shaking my head slowly. You didn't mean to. David, you meant every single time you went there. Every message. Every touch. Every lie. You chose her. He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled back. Please, he begged, his voice breaking now, it was a mistake. I made a mistake. I looked at him, really looked. And that's when I realized the truth. He wasn't sorry for doing it. He was sorry for getting caught. Something in me went quiet. Dead quiet. I straightened up, wiped the tears from my cheeks, and whispered, you should leave. He blinked. What? You heard me. Go. Pack your things and go to her. You're good at that, aren't you? Leaving me for her. He hesitated, like he was waiting for me to take it back. But I didn't. Not this time. He grabbed his jacket and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned around, his voice barely a whisper. I never stopped loving you. I smiled bitterly. No. You just stopped respecting me. And with that, he walked out. The door clicked shut. The sound echoed through the house like thunder. For a long time, I just stood there, numb, hollow, broken in a way words couldn't describe. I thought I'd cry again, but I didn't. There were no tears left. Just silence. And the faint smell of cold coffee and regret. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, wondering how a person could break you so quietly. But beneath that heartbreak, something darker began to grow. A thought I couldn't silence. If Lila and David could take everything from me, my peace, my love, my trust, maybe it was time I took something back. Something they wouldn't forget. Because forgiveness was off the table. Now, it was time for consequences. That night, after David walked out, something inside me changed. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was focus. Cold, terrifying focus. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty side he used to sleep on. The pillow still had his scent. For a moment, I almost reached out, then stopped myself. I whispered into the darkness. You don't get to exist in this room anymore. The words sounded strange coming from my mouth, but they felt good. For weeks, I'd been begging for the truth. Now I had it. And with the truth came something even stronger, the need to take control. Because Lila didn't just steal my husband. She stole my peace, my dignity, my best friend's shoulder to cry on. I wasn't going to let her walk away smiling. Not after what she'd done. The next morning, I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't the same Sarah anymore. Her eyes looked sharper, colder. Her lips didn't tremble when she smiled. I brushed my hair, put on a light coat of lipstick, and whispered, "Let's give them something to remember." That day, I started my plan. First step, pretend everything is fine. David hadn't called or texted since leaving, which made things easier. But Lila? Oh, she still had the audacity to text me. "Hey babe, haven't seen you in a while. Everything okay?" The irony nearly made me choke on my coffee. I typed back, hands shaking with fury but smiling all the same. "Yeah, just been busy. Miss you too." She replied with a heart emoji. A heart. That tiny red symbol that once meant friendship now looked like blood. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Because by then, my plan had already begun forming in my head. Step 2, get closer to the truth. I spent the next few days watching patterns, his car, her work schedule, the quiet hours when her house lights went off. She lived just 4 blocks away, and for the first time in years, I started walking again. Each night I passed by her place, pretending to be out for a jog, pretending not to notice the way her curtains stayed closed when David's car was parked out front. But I noticed everything. The shadows. The timing. The faint sound of his laugh when the windows were cracked open. I wrote it all down. Every date, every visit, every late-night whisper that carried through the still air. It became a ritual, one I both hated and needed. Step 3, act like the perfect ex-wife. When David called after a week, his voice sounded tired. "Can we talk?" he asked. I made sure to sound calm, not broken, not bitter, just accepting. "Sure," I said softly. "Come by tomorrow." When he arrived, I had already made tea. The same flavor he liked, jasmine and honey. The kitchen smelled like peace, but my heart was thundering with chaos. He sat down, eyes darting nervously. "I just wanted to check on you," he began. "I know things got ugly." I smiled faintly. "You mean when you confessed to sleeping with my best friend?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I made a mistake, Sarah." "Yeah," I whispered. "You did." He looked up, surprised by my calmness. I leaned forward slightly. "But don't worry. I'm not going to make this ugly. I just need some time." Relief washed over his face. He thought I was forgiving him. He thought he'd won. And that's exactly what I wanted him to think. Later that night, I went into the garage. There were still boxes from our old home projects, things we'd never unpacked after the move. Old paint cans. Tools. Glues. A memory hit me. One day, he'd been fixing a wooden cabinet, and I teased him for buying the industrial-strength stuff. I knelt beside the box, lifting the lid. The label stared back at me like fate. Super industrial adhesive bonds instantly, irreversibly. My fingers traced the edge of the tube. That's when the thought hit me, wild, dark, but so tempting I couldn't breathe. No. No, that was too far. Wasn't it? But the longer I stared at that glue, the quieter the word no became. Because what did they do? They took my trust and burned it down. Why shouldn't they feel stuck, literally, with the choices they made? The next day, I started putting the final pieces together. I played nice. Smiled more. Even texted Lila again. "Hey. Been thinking we should have a girls' night soon. Just like old times." She replied instantly. "OMG yes. I miss you so much." I almost laughed at the irony. She had no idea she was talking to the woman who'd been watching her every move. David, too, started calling more often. Maybe guilt was eating him alive. Or maybe he sensed something changing in me. Either way, it didn't matter. I'd already decided what I needed to do. Because forgiveness was never part of my plan. This wasn't about making peace. It was about making sure neither of them ever forgot me, not for a second. As I turned off the lights that night, one thought echoed in my head, soft but venomous. They glued themselves together with lies. Now, I'll make sure those lies stick forever. The next morning, I woke up with a strange calmness. Like the kind that comes right before a thunderstorm. Everything around me looked the same messy kitchen, the same half-empty coffee mug, but I wasn't the same anymore. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I had already made peace with the monster inside me. Because I wasn't doing this out of rage anymore. No. I was doing this out of balance. If they broke me, I would return the favor, beautifully, silently, perfectly. I spent the day preparing, one step at a time, like a soldier before battle. First, I waited for David's text. He always texted before sneaking out, pretending to work late. Sure enough, at 6:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Hey, I might be late tonight. Got a few files to finish. Files? Yeah, sure, files named Lila. I smiled and typed back. That's fine, honey. Don't stay too long, okay? I almost laughed as I hit send. Even my lies sounded sweeter than theirs. Next, I went to the bathroom, our old shared one, and opened the drawer under the sink. That's where he always kept his overnight bag, the one he'd use when he claimed to be traveling for conferences. I sat down on the floor, staring at it. My fingers hovered over the zipper. Once you do this, I whispered to myself, there's no turning back. Then, slowly, I unzipped the bag. Inside were the usual things: toothbrush, deodorant, a clean shirt, and a small silver bottle. The one labeled lubricant for intimate comfort. I stared at it, the word intimate burning into my brain like poison. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the other tube, the one I had taken from the garage. Industrial adhesive. Instant bond. No reversal. I held both bottles side by side. They looked identical. Even the texture of the labels matched. It was almost poetic, two things meant to bring people closer, now destined to trap them forever. I unscrewed the top of the glue and carefully poured it into the empty lube bottle, using gloves to avoid any mistakes. The smell was faint but sharp, almost metallic. It felt dangerous. Real. Then I sealed it shut, wiped the edges, and placed it back in the bag exactly where it had been. When I zipped it up, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and nausea. What I'd done wasn't just revenge. It was irreversible. As I stood up, my reflection in the bathroom mirror caught my eye. For the first time, I didn't see a victim. I saw someone who had finally taken her story back. Let's see how it feels to be stuck with the choices you made, I whispered. Then I cleaned everything: gloves, counter, even the air around me. Every trace of evidence had to disappear. By 8 p.m., David was getting ready to head to work. I watched from the kitchen doorway as he checked his bag, straightened his shirt, and looked at his reflection like he was the same innocent man I married. Be safe, I said sweetly. He turned to me, maybe noticing something different in my tone, but he didn't ask. He just smiled, that fake, confident smile I once loved. I'll text you when I'm done. Sure, I said. Good luck, finishing those files. He laughed lightly, unaware of the poison hidden behind my words, and walked out the door. The second it closed, I exhaled. My knees almost gave out. For a moment, I wanted to run after him. To stop it. To scream. But then, I remembered Lila's text. You're the sister I never had. I remembered how she sat beside me while knowing she was destroying me. And that's when my hesitation burned away. At 8:45 p.m., I followed. Quietly. Carefully. I parked 3 houses down from Lila's place, lights off, engine idling. Through the window, I saw her familiar figure moving inside. Laughing. Pouring wine. Setting 2 glasses down. My heart clenched. It used to be our Friday night ritual, wine and laughter and secrets. Now she shared it with him. From the shadows, I could see David's car pull up. He got out, looked around once, then walked up to her door like a man who belonged there. The door opened. She hugged him. They kissed. And in that single moment, I felt the last bit of mercy in me vanish. I whispered to myself, "You wanted him, Lila? You can have him. All of him." Time felt heavy. Minutes passed like hours. Then, through the window, I saw them disappear into the bedroom. I didn't look away. Not out of desire, but because I wanted to witness the moment their lies would finally glue them together, literally. I sat there in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every breath felt like fire. And then, faintly, through the night air, I heard it. A scream. High-pitched. Panicked. Followed by another. And another. Then shouting. Cursing. Thuds. I leaned forward, eyes wide, heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Is this actually happening?" I whispered. Seconds later, another scream pierced the silence, this time from David. His voice cracked, desperate. "Lila. What the? It's not coming off. We're stuck. We're..." And that's when I smiled. Not out of joy. Not out of peace. But out of poetic justice. Because for the first time in weeks, I finally felt free. I could hear chaos breaking loose inside the house. Objects falling. Lila crying. David shouting in confusion and pain. I turned on my car, the hum of the engine drowning their screams, and whispered, "Guess you two finally stuck together, just like you wanted." Then I drove off slowly, the sound of sirens beginning to rise in the distance. Sirens that would soon bring neighbors, chaos, and humiliation. But that was still to come. And as I drove into the night, one question pulsed in my mind. Was I done? Or was this just the beginning of something even darker? The sound of sirens faded in my rearview mirror, but my heart didn't. It kept pounding, loud, steady, almost rhythmic. Like the heartbeat of someone finally waking up after years of sleep. I should have gone home. I should have ended it there. But I didn't. Because something deep inside me whispered, "You need to see this." I turned the car around. Slowly. Deliberately. Back toward Lila's house, the same place where my marriage had quietly died. When I arrived, the street was chaos. Blue and red lights flashed across the walls of the houses. Neighbors in nightgowns and slippers stood outside, hands over their mouths, whispering. Someone was filming. Of course they were. A fire truck, an ambulance, and 2 police cars blocked the street. I parked behind a tree, far enough not to be noticed but close enough to watch everything. Lila's house, once so calm, so perfect, looked like the stage of a tragedy. The front door was wide open. Firefighters and paramedics rushed in and out, their voices sharp with confusion. And then, over all of it, I heard Lila scream again. "Just get it off. Please. It burns, it burns." Her voice cracked with pain and humiliation. I covered my mouth, the sound mixing horror with something darker. From where I stood, I could see movement through the window, flashes of red uniforms, blankets, people shouting. Then, suddenly, I heard David's voice, deep, panicked, and angry. "Don't touch it. Just, oh God, just do something." He was furious. But beneath the fury was something else, terror. I leaned closer, the cold air brushing against my face. And that's when I heard one of the firefighters say it. Sir, we can't separate you like this. You're going to have to come with us." And then, the thing I thought I'd never see in my life, they were carried out together. Wrapped in separate blankets, yet, attached. The crowd gasped. Phones went up. Someone muttered, "Is that David and Lila?" And in that instant, my heart clenched and expanded at once. Every lie. Every night I cried myself to sleep. Every time I begged for the truth. It was all there, on display, under the harsh glare of flashing lights. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt powerful. But instead, I felt hollow. I watched as David's face twisted in shame, his eyes darting, searching the crowd, praying no one would recognize him. But people did. They always do. Lila was sobbing uncontrollably, clutching at the blanket as if she could hide the evidence of their betrayal. And the firefighters, God bless them, tried to stay professional, but I saw the smirks. Even they couldn't hide their disbelief. Careful. Don't pull too hard, you'll rip the. How did this even happen? They said, glue? Whispers rippled through the crowd. A teenage boy snorted. An older woman shook her head and muttered, that's what happens when you play with fire. And I just stood there, motionless, my fingers digging into my coat. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. But all I did was watch. They loaded them into the ambulance, still stuck together. Their faces burned red, not from pain, but from humiliation. The siren blared again. The ambulance drove away. And with it, went everything I thought I'd lost control of. The revenge I had planned so carefully was now public. By tomorrow morning, everyone would know. Our neighbors, our co-workers, our families. The perfect image I built, shattered in front of a dozen smartphone cameras. And I wasn't sure if I had one. Or if I had destroyed us all. When the crowd started to disperse, I finally stepped out from behind the tree. The cold air hit my face, sharp and heavy. The faint smell of glue and smoke hung in the air, proof of what I'd done. I walked toward the house slowly, my shoes crunching on the gravel. Every window was open. Lights flickered. Inside, I could still hear faint echoes, their chaos turned into whispers. I stepped up to the porch and looked down. A wine glass was shattered near the door. A red stain, not blood, just wine, seeped into the carpet. It almost looked like art. I whispered to the empty house. You wanted to share everything, Lila? You finally did. Then I turned and walked away. The neighbors pretended not to look at me as I passed by. But I saw them. Their eyes flicked up, wide with realization. They knew. One of them, Mrs. Green, the woman who always bragged about her husband's loyalty, placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "You poor thing." And I smiled faintly, replying, "Oh no, pour them." Then I walked to my car and got in, closing the door softly, like sealing a chapter of my life. As I started the engine, I saw my reflection in the mirror again. This time, it wasn't the same woman who cried over betrayal. It was someone else, someone colder, someone freer. But beneath the calm, there was still a flicker of something uneasy. Because as I drove home that night, my phone buzzed. One message. From an unknown number. "You think it's over?" My heart froze. I looked at the screen, confused, scared. It wasn't from David. It wasn't from Lila. And whoever it was, had attached a photo. Of me. Standing behind that tree. Watching. I slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a stop in the middle of the road. My hands trembled. My breath came short and fast. How? Who had been watching me? The night that was supposed to end my pain, had just opened a new door. And somewhere out there, someone else now knew my secret. I turned the phone face down, started driving again, heart pounding harder than before. And as the city lights blurred past, one thought kept looping in my mind. This isn't over. The night had finally gone quiet, too quiet. No sirens, no screams, just the hum of my engine and the echo of my heartbeat in the empty street. For the first time, I realized how dark the world becomes after revenge. You think it'll set you free. But sometimes, it just replaces one prison with another. I drove in silence, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The glow from the street lamps flashed across my windshield in brief, nervous intervals, like the pulse of guilt itself. That photo on my phone wouldn't leave my mind. Who took it? When? The message's words burned behind my eyes. You think it's over. No name. No number I recognized. Just a shadow in my inbox that suddenly felt more dangerous than any betrayal. When I reached home, the porch light flickered twice before turning on. A small, fragile light trying to make peace with the dark. I stepped inside. Everything looked the same. The quiet furniture, the half-burned candle, the framed wedding photo I hadn't yet taken down. David's smile looked so sincere in it that for a moment, I hated myself for still keeping it there. I walked straight to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat down at the table where so many of our arguments had started. The glass trembled in my hand. I whispered into the silence. You got what you deserved, David. But even as I said it, my voice didn't sound victorious. It sounded uncertain. My phone buzzed again. The same number. Delete that video before it's too late. My stomach dropped. Video? What video? I opened my gallery, and there it was. A new file I hadn't recorded. I pressed play. The screen filled with a dim image. Me, standing behind that tree, watching the ambulance. Then it zoomed closer, shakier, like whoever filmed it was breathing hard. And then, my face. Clear as day. The same woman who'd glued two people together in revenge, now staring at her own sin from the outside. My fingers slipped, and the phone clattered to the floor. I crawled back, heart pounding. Whoever sent that text had followed me there. They had seen everything. The silence around me suddenly felt alive. The wind outside tapped the window. The fridge hummed like a low growl. I looked around the kitchen, the door, the hallway, the shadow under the staircase. Nothing. But it felt like something was watching. I picked up the phone and texted back. Who is this? No response. I tried again. What do you want? Still nothing. I waited, seconds that felt like hours. And then, 3 dots appeared. Typing. Then gone. Then again, typing. My breath hitched. Finally, one message arrived. Truth always costs something. I stared at it for a long time, trying to make sense of the words. What truth? What cost? And then I remembered. The small security camera hidden in the corner of Lila's living room. David had installed it months ago, claiming it was for safety. But what if it had captured everything that night? I grabbed my keys and headed back out. The air was colder now, heavier. The streets looked washed out, empty, like the world itself had stopped breathing. When I reached Lila's neighborhood again, it was deserted. Yellow police tape flapped lazily in the wind. Her front door was sealed, a lock and a warning sign taped across it. But through the side window, I could still see the glow of the security light. I broke the tape, my hands shaking, and slipped inside. The smell hit me first. Glue, disinfectant, and burnt rubber. Everywhere I looked, chaos. Broken furniture, scattered clothes, dried stains on the floor. And there, in the corner, the tiny black camera light blinked red. Still recording. I pulled it down and plugged it into my laptop right there on the floor. The footage began playing automatically. At first, it showed the dinner party, wine, laughter, that fake perfection. Then, the discovery, the confrontation, the trap. And finally, me. Standing in the doorway, watching it all unfold. But there was something else. Someone else. A faint reflection in the glass behind me. A tall silhouette, watching from outside the window. Not a cop. Not a neighbor. Someone who knew exactly what I had planned. My stomach turned cold. The video ended with the sound of sirens. Then static. Then black. I sat there for a long time, staring at the frozen frame of that silhouette. Who was it? Why follow me? The text message echoed again in my head. Truth always costs something. I closed the laptop and whispered. Then what's the price? And right then. A knock. Soft. Once. Twice. I froze. Another knock. I turned slowly toward the door, heart racing. The doorknob twitched. A shadow moved under the crack. I picked up the nearest thing, an empty wine bottle, and held it like a weapon. The door creaked open an inch. And a voice said, quietly, Sarah, we need to talk. My breath caught. It was David's voice. But he shouldn't have been out of the hospital. He shouldn't have been walking. I stepped back, trembling, my mind spinning between fear and disbelief. The door opened wider. Half his face was bandaged, his eyes bloodshot, desperate. He whispered again. You don't know what you've done. And then, from behind him, a second shadow moved. Lila. Alive. Awake. And smiling. Before I could speak, the camera on the counter lit up by itself. Recording. Lila's voice was calm, almost sweet. Your turn, Sarah. The red light blinked faster. The trap was no longer mine. It was theirs. And as the sirens began to fade again in the distance, I realized the real game was just beginning. The red camera light blinked in the corner like an unblinking eye, watching, recording, judging. I stood frozen in my doorway, staring at them both. David's face was a patchwork of bandages and bruises. His expression, somewhere between pain and pure fury. Lila stood beside him, her once soft smile now sharpened into something venomous. For a long second, none of us spoke. The night was so still, I could hear the faint crackle of the streetlight outside. Then David stepped forward. "You really thought you won, didn't you, Sarah?" His voice was hoarse, low, the kind that crawls under your skin. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. You shouldn't even be here. You." Lila interrupted, her tone syrupy sweet. "Relax, sweetheart. We're not here to hurt you. Not physically, anyway." Her eyes flicked toward the camera still recording in the corner. "You see, we just want you to understand something." My pulse pounded in my ears. Understand what? David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. He tossed it onto the table between us. It slid across the wood with a dull scrape, stopping inches from my hand. "That," he said, "is the rest of the footage." I blinked. "What footage?" Lila smirked. "Oh, come on, Sarah. You think you were the only one who planned something? You glued us together. Poetic, really. But see, I had a little insurance policy." She stepped closer, her perfume familiar and suffocating. "Every time you came crying to me about David, every tear, every confession, I recorded it. Every single one." My stomach turned. I remembered all those late-night talks, those hugs that felt safe. All of it, lies. David leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a blade. "She didn't just record your sob stories, Sarah. She recorded your revenge." The air in the room thickened. "What?" I breathed. He nodded. "She knew what you were going to do. And she let you do it. She wanted it on camera. She wanted you to bury yourself." Lila's smile widened as she tilted her head. "You were my perfect little puppet. So predictable. So emotional. So poetic." My vision blurred. Rage, fear, shame, everything tangled into one unbearable storm. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you do that to me? I loved you like a sister." Her laughter was soft but cruel. "Because, darling, I got tired of being the sidekick in your perfect fairy tale." David slammed his hand on the table, making me flinch. "You ruined my life, Sarah. My job, my reputation, everything." The video went viral. Do you know what it's like to be the man glued to his mistress on live TV? I wanted to scream that he deserved it. That he'd broken my life first. But the words caught in my throat. Because deep down, I realized something awful. I had become the villain too. Lila circled me slowly, like a predator toying with its prey. "Don't worry, we're not going to the police. No, that would be too easy. You see, I'm an editor now. And this," she pointed at the flash drive, "is my next project." She crouched beside me, whispering in my ear. A tragic story about a betrayed wife who turns into a monster. Oh, the world will eat it up. I snapped. "You're insane." David chuckled darkly. "Maybe. But not as insane as the woman who glued two people together." My hand twitched toward the camera cord. I yanked it from the wall, desperate to end whatever this nightmare was. But Lila just laughed. "You think it matters? You think that's the only camera? Oh, honey." She pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward me. Live stream. Thousands of viewers. Comments pouring in. "OMG, is this real? That's the woman from the glue story. Justice or karma?" My blood ran cold. They weren't just humiliating me. They were broadcasting my breakdown to the world. "Please," I whispered. "Please stop this." David's voice cracked, but his eyes were hard. "You should have thought of that before you destroyed us." He turned to Lila. "Let's go." Let her rot in her guilt. They walked out the door together. Two monsters I had created, walking into the night hand in hand. The moment the door shut, my knees gave out. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. Everything I had, love, friendship, revenge, had turned to ash. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. I didn't know. When I finally looked up, the camera's red light was on again. Blinking. Recording. And then my phone buzzed one last time. A new message. Same number. No name. The truth always costs something. You've just paid the first installment. I dropped the phone, staring blankly at the floor. The video, the live stream, the humiliation, it was all out there now. There was no undoing it. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the heartbreak and fear, something began to burn again. A spark of defiance. Because if they thought they'd ended me, they were wrong. The camera blinked again. And I whispered to it, through tears. You want a story? Fine. But I'll decide how it ends. As the screen fades to black, Sarah's voice echoes faintly. What happened next changed everything again. Because when you think revenge is over, that's when it really begins. If you've ever felt the world watching you when you're at your lowest, you'll understand what came next. That night, after David and Lila left, I didn't sleep. The red light of the camera still blinked faintly, mocking me, whispering that the whole world had seen what I'd become. Every few seconds, I'd catch my reflection in the dark window, puffy eyes, trembling hands, mascara streaks down my cheeks. I looked like a ghost of the woman I once was. The woman who believed in love. The woman who believed in friends. But the thing about ghosts. They don't die until they finish their story. At sunrise, I made coffee, not because I wanted it, but because doing something ordinary made me feel human again. Then, a knock on the door. I froze. My heart raced. For a split second, I thought they'd come back. But when I opened it, it wasn't David or Lila. It was a delivery boy, holding a small, unmarked box. Miss Sarah. I nodded weakly. He handed it to me and left without a word. The box was cold. Inside, a flash drive. No note. No return address. Just a single piece of paper with 2 words. Watch this. I sat on the couch, staring at my laptop for what felt like forever before I finally plugged it in. The screen flickered to life. First, static. Then, footage. It wasn't from my house. It wasn't from the night of the glue incident. It was from Lila's. The same night. The video showed Lila setting up hidden cameras, in her bedroom, in the corners, even near her window. She was recording everything. Then I saw her phone, the one she'd used to livestream me. It wasn't just her viewers watching that night. A live chat scrolled at the side of the screen. And one username kept appearing, over and over. Darklight_97. They weren't commenting like fans. They were directing her. Move the camera closer. Make sure she sees the bracelet. Don't stop recording when she screams. My blood ran cold. Who was Darklight_97? The footage cut to another scene, Lila sitting on the bed, laughing, talking to the camera. She thinks she's getting revenge tonight, she whispered. But this is just the beginning. The views are going crazy. You were right, this story's going to blow up. She paused. And when it does, you'll finally get what you wanted. She'll pay for everything she did to you. To you? My heart stopped. Who was she talking to? The camera panned slightly, and for a moment, the reflection in the mirror behind her came into view. It wasn't David. It was my brother. I gasped out loud. The mug slipped from my hands, shattering against the floor. He had been behind it all? My older brother, Ethan, the one who disappeared years ago after borrowing money and never paying it back. The one I'd refused to help when he came begging for more. He'd always blamed me for choosing my husband over family. And now, he had chosen my husband and my best friend to destroy me. The screen flickered again, a new clip. Ethan sitting in some dark room, speaking directly to the camera. His voice sent chills down my spine. You took everything from me, Sarah. When I needed you, you turned your back. So I turned the world against you. You're not the victim, you're the villain. You always were. He smiled faintly. Don't worry. The story's not over yet. The footage ended. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the black screen. It all made sense now. The cameras. The recordings. The perfectly timed chaos. Every step I took toward revenge was a step he had planned for me. I looked around my house, the broken glass, the coffee stains, the blinking camera light, and something inside me finally snapped. I wasn't the puppet anymore. I opened my laptop, searched for the livestream replay that Lila had broadcasted, and began typing. My fingers trembled, but my voice was steady. I started a new live video. The same platform. The same audience. You all wanted to see the crazy wife, I said quietly, staring into the lens. Well, here I am. But tonight, you're going to see the truth. I played the footage, every clip from the flash drive. The secret cameras. The mirror reflection. Ethan's confession. The chat exploded. What? Her brother did this. This is insane. I didn't stop. I let the entire world see the manipulation, the betrayal, the setup. When the video ended, I leaned forward and whispered, "You wanted a story that would go viral? You've got one. But this time, I'm the one telling it." By the next morning, the clip had millions of views. Police cars lined my street. David and Lila's names were trending, so was Ethan's. And me. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Not because I won, but because I finally understood, closure doesn't come from revenge or exposure. It comes from truth. I deleted the live video, shut my laptop, and stepped outside. The air smelled like rain. Clean. Fresh. Like a beginning. But as I walked to my car, I noticed something. A small envelope tucked under the wiper. No address. No stamp. Just my name. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single photograph, grainy, black and white. It showed me, sitting at my desk that very morning, recording the live stream. The angle wasn't from my camera. It was from outside my window. And on the back, one sentence written in familiar handwriting. Stories never really end, Sarah. They just change narrators. The screen fades to black. The soft hum of the camera lingers. Then, silence.